computer. And the floor is all yours, my friend, for the next 45 minutes, sir.
Cool. Thanks. Thanks, Eric. My name's Stan. I'm an alcoholic, and my sobriety date's October 3rd, 1994. So I have 31 years coming up on 32 in October. And my home group is Wake Up Call. Meets here in Park City, Utah every morning at 7 a.m. And my sponsor's name is Chris Raymer, and I sponsor a lot of guys. And it seems like if you get Chris Raymer as a sponsor, you also get Myers for some reason. And sometimes I find myself talking to Myers more than Chris. But I was talking to Myers Friday, and we were talking about it in the early beginnings. And he was like, Stan, you were very desperate, but you were picky. Right? I come to AA. I know what those words mean: terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. And I'm begging you to help me. And then 2 weeks into it, I'm telling you how to help me. Because like I heard in the beginning of this meeting, I was going to a lot of frothy emotional appeal meetings. A lot of meetings where the better philosophy of life was being talked about, even though the book contradicts that. But I wasn't reading the big book. I was just going to meetings, hoping against hope. See, and actually, when I stop drinking, my life gets worse because I'm not treating my alcoholism with alcohol, and I'm not treating my alcoholism with God or the spiritual tools that are laid out in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it has nothing to do with reading, because I'm reading every self-help book under the sun. But those help with the five senses I already have. The big book helps with the sixth sense. See, and I had none of that. See, I was born in Miami, Florida. I come from a non-alcoholic, non-violent family, and I was a violent alcoholic. My family's motto was God, family, football. That philosophy of life helped for the non-alcoholics in my family, which was all of them. And then there was me. I didn't know lack of power. That was my dilemma. No wonder I couldn't live up to anybody's expectations or even my own. I had great intentions, but like I heard what was read in the doctor's opinion, at some point, I crossed the line into alcoholism. And every time I picked up a drink, the phenomenon of craving kicked in. So the logical thing is, hey, I'll just stop drinking. The phenomenon of craving won't kick in. No one ever really explained to me the merciless obsession. Nobody talked to me about the insanity that they talked about in Fred's story or Jim's story. Especially in Fred's story where he says, what you men told me about alcoholism did not occur to me. I'd be at a 7 a.m. meeting, a 10 a.m. meeting, a noon meeting, and have a drink in my hand at 1 p.m. Not understanding it. And yet I would go to treatment facility after treatment facility, sober living after sober living. Y'all, I love treatment. I get to sleep, I get to eat, I get to talk about myself all day. That is an alcoholic's dream come true. And treatment works if you follow the directions. Because every time I went to treatment, they gave me a big book. When I left, they said, go to AA, get a sponsor, and do the steps. I just went to AA. I'm a meeting maker that's not making it. I'm a guy that's dying on the front row of Alcoholics Anonymous. For all I know, I got sober the day before I died of this illness. And the solution was the same on October 2nd, the day before I got sober. The solution was the same on October 3rd when I did get sober. And the solution is the same today, May 24th, 2026. I turned 60 yesterday. That's insane for an alcoholic of my type and kind. When I got sober, I was 28 years old, and I'm living on the streets of Atlanta. And I'd go to meetings and they'd say, Stan, can you just not drink one day at a time? And that felt very comforting. And I would get a thrill of the rush of saying, yes, I can do that. And I really believed it. I would say anybody can do anything for one day, and then the time would come. Like in Fred's story, if you have the mind of an alcoholic, the time and place will come where you'll have no defense. And I would ask people, what's the defense? And they'd throw out all this stuff. A lot of human tools. And I thought I had a human problem. What I found out was I had a spiritual malady. And I needed spiritual tools. And those human tools felt and seemed like they would work. Stan, can you just no matter what, pick up a drink? I'd be like, I can do, yeah, I can no matter what. And then I'd pick up a drink. Stan, you got our phone numbers? Okay, I'm going to call you. See, I'd never read the book. I'd never even read at the end of the doctor's opinion where it says, I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book. I had 7 of them because I went to treatment 7 times. And I felt good every time I left, and it felt as though I wasn't going to drink again. And it felt as though I'd been touched by the hand of God and the obsession had been lifted. And then all through the book, like it says, but I was drunk a short time later. And I'm torturing everybody in the way. Because I have a mom and dad that love me. And I have a brother, sister that love me. And I'm like the tornado roaring through the lives of others. Yet if you ask me what I am, I say I'm a good guy that just drinks too much. I'm the only one that has that definition on this planet. But that's the delusion. That's what they're talking about in the doctor's opinion. I cannot tell the truth from the false. My alcoholic life seems like the only normal one. There is nothing on this planet that can remove the film off my eyes except the 12 steps I found. Nothing. Period. And I don't feel like doing the 12 steps. It wasn't like I was digging in or scared. I was just like, yeah, I don't feel like doing it. I don't feel like doing a 4-step. I don't feel like making amends. And then you tell me I'm selfish, self-centered, my feelings get hurt, I go to another meeting. Consequences adding up. See, I think I have a mild substance use disorder because I'm going to therapy and I'm drinking on antabuse. And I'm dying. My license had been taken away for 5 years. I don't believe in drinking and driving. I'm not a supporter. My intention is not to drink and drive, and I drink and drive. I'm not a supporter of assault and battery, but I did it all the time. I was a car thief, grand theft auto. Wasn't my intention. And I'm coming back today. I'm picking up another white chip. Thank God I never got all my sobriety dates tattooed on my body. I would just have just marked out. But the weird part was every sobriety date I got, I thought, this is it. This is the one. I get my family's hopes up, my hopes up, and then come crashing down. And on October 3rd, 1994, see, I was in Atlanta because I had gotten a job at CNN. I'd graduated from Florida State University. I got a job at CNN in Atlanta. And within 18 months, I no longer had that job. And they weren't sending me to the nice treatment facilities anymore. And I'm living on the streets. And every now and then the police would pick me up and they'd take me to Grady Hospital, the indigent hospital back then. I wasn't going to Emory Hospital. I wasn't going to Decatur Hospital. I wasn't going to Peachtree Charter. I wasn't going to these nice detoxes anymore. They dropped me off at Grady. And I'd spend 7 days there. And then they'd give me a bag of new used clothes and $2.25 in quarters to go take Marta somewhere, the public transportation. And I would tell them back then, I think detox was on the 6th or 7th floor, and I would tell, you're not going to see me again. And I could have passed the lie detector test. You're not going to see me again. I'm not going to pick up a drink. I would take that short elevator down, walk out those front doors, and there was a liquor store down the street. And the guy there would sell me a pint of Jim Beam for $2.25. And I was coming out on October 3rd, 1994, and a guy's walking down the street and he's got his big book and 12 and 12 in his hand. And I'm like, you got to be shitting me. And I'd seen him at meetings, always had a smile on his face, always talking about the work. always sitting in front of the Triangle Club at a picnic table, taking guys through the work. Hey, Stan, all smiley. What are you doing? Just got to detox again. Do you want to get sober? Yeah, I want to get sober. Where are you headed? Headed to the liquor store. But then what he said to me, he said, you know what, Stan, you have the most powerful illness in the world. You need the most powerful solution in the world, and I can offer that to you. That held my interest. And I looked, I'm like, dude, why do you always carry your books around with you? And he said, because you never know when you'll be able to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. Carry my books around wherever I go. They're either in my glove box, my backpacks. Because he opened it, he flipped it open and started reading some things out of the doctor's opinion to me. And I really didn't understand it, but there was heaps of evidence that that sounded like me. But I don't feel it through my head or my toes. I'm just like, that sounds like me, but after that short conversation, I knew if I didn't do steps 2 through 12, I was going to drink again. Because at this point, I don't care if I live or die. I have no place to live. See, and what I'm looking at him for is I'm like, why don't you give me some money? Because all he's telling me is I can take you through this book. Why don't you give me a job? Well, I can take you through this book. Why don't you give me a place to live, dude? Well, I can take you through this book. And he took me to the Atlanta Union Mission, which was down in Techwood back then, because the Olympics hadn't come to Atlanta yet. And I lived at that mission for almost a year. And he would pick me up on Saturday mornings and we'd go to the men's meeting at the Triangle Club. And then we went to Piedmont Park. He had a book and I had a book. And he said, we're going to read this book and do what it says. I'm like, that's it? He said, yeah, that's it. I'm like, where's your PowerPoint? Where's your pamphlets? Where's your worksheets? Like, I need a display. No, Stan, we're just going to follow the directions. See, he knew everything out the book. I didn't. He knew about the stuff it said in the Vision for You. He knew about the 10-step promises. Because when I looked at him and said, what does this defense look like that comes from a higher power? And he flipped to the 10-step promises and read them to me. Because he was the guy that always talked about permanent sobriety. To stop drinking for good and for all. That the problem would be removed. It does not exist for us. When he looked at me and said, Stan, the easiest thing I do today is not drink. And I'm like, this is insane. You're the one in spiritual make-believe. And I was the one in spiritual make-believe. See, I'm still delusional. Do you know you're delusional when you're delusional? See, I wanted to understand the stuff prior to doing it. But also, I want something for nothing. And then how dare you call me selfish self-centeredness? That's the root of our problem. And that this destruction of self-centeredness was going to be the price I would have to pay. And he made it real clear this was a lifelong deal. And I didn't like that too much either. Because I wanted to get sober, be done with this, be done with you people. Because like when he said, Stan, your lifelong friends are going to come from AA, I thought, oh no, this is awful. Man, thank God. Thank God for Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank God they wrote it down. Thank God this guy took the time out. I'm indebted to Alcoholics Anonymous. And that first meeting I was court ordered to go to, I could have cared less if AA was here the next day or not. And now the transformation, that profound alteration to my reaction to life that it talks about in the spiritual experience. That I tried with therapy, that I tried with medication, that I tried with the religion, that I tried with everything under the sun. And I got it in a few short months. That next time we met, we read Bill's story where it said, alcohol was my master. Quicksand stretched all around me. I know what that feels like and means. And it wasn't just once or twice, it was my life. I am a menace to society. I harm people, but I don't intend to. But I do over and over and over and over. And then we read there is a solution. And he talked about that common solution that we could harmoniously agree upon. That we were going to do that solution. And then it showed how my mind works. That I'm unable to bring into consciousness the humiliation or suffering of a week or month ago. That I was without defense against the first drink. That for some obscure, deal, I've lost my choice of drinking. Because I used to hear that at meetings too. I chose not to drink this morning. I thought, oh, I'm going to do that. I couldn't. Like when later on, when the other doctor says you're 100% hopeless apart from divine help, I wouldn't treat a couple of you guys as patients if I didn't have to. You're too heartbreaking. Man, I almost missed out. Simple but not easy. Jeez, then we read about more about alcoholism in those stories. The jaywalking story that would always confused me till I read it with him. And Jim's story and Fred's story. And then when we read about we agnostics, about my prejudice, that all it was asking me to do is lay it aside. But that's all I wanted to talk about. But it said, however are inadequate my idea about God is, it's enough to start. Could I just be willing? And something's happening when we're meeting each week. Then we read about the third step. And it's funny because it said, we thought well before taking this step. There wasn't much thinking for me at that point. Like, what am I thinking well about? This really crappy life I'm living, I'm living at the mission, eating soup 3 times a day. What's there to think about? Yeah, I'm ready to abandon myself to God because I have no idea what I'm doing. But he was sitting across the table from me and he told me that I would understand all this at the end. And it says we launch into action. Because all the other times I was really good at doing steps 1, 2, and 3, doing the third step prayer, being in treatment, doing this, doing that. I'd never flipped the page where it said it would have no permanent effect unless followed by this. Right? When I go to treatment, I write out a first step. I write out a second step. I write out a third step. I'm going on experiential therapy. And all I've done with this guy is read the book. He's taking the meetings all around Atlanta. We're going to the Roswell Club. We're going to the NABA Club. We're going to Clarkston 12 Step. We're going to Triangle. And he literally would sit right next to me. And after everyone share, he'd lean over and he either'd say, that's Alcoholics Anonymous, or he'd say, that's not Alcoholics Anonymous. And he's talking about the book. I remember he said, Stan, there is a treatment plan in Alcoholics Anonymous. And he read it to me in the front of the book. The AA program of recovery is in the first portion of this volume. Because I always followed the treatment plan when I'm in treatment, so why am I not following it now? And I finally did an inventory that my inventory looked like on page 65. I had those columns, I was using those words. The resentment was the number one offender that had blocked me off from the sunlight of the spirit. No wonder I was getting no connection. Starting to connect the dots. Then I do a fear inventory like it says. Starting to give me some prayers in there, some stuff I can do. Save me from being angry, asking God to remove the fear, direct my attention to what He would have me be. Then I commenced to outgrow fear. Man, and then that sex and relationship inventory. Holy cow. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? I was inconsiderate with everybody I came in contact with. Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where were we at fault? And then this was what should we have done instead? It literally was always the opposite of whatever I did, which then connected the dots of lack of power. That was my dilemma. Did you want to do that at first? Yes, but I couldn't. I did this instead. And like that question, yeah, the power of God does go deep. Because that's what this stuff was going to start changing, this ingrained stuff that nothing could change. We ask God to mold our ideas and help us to live up to them. So I have all this down. Then I read it to him. Do that fifth step with him. Dude, I'm just reading across the columns. Common denominator is me, and I'm selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and frightened. Selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and frightened, just over and over and over. See, I used to always tell people I had abandonment issues. Now I'm reading this and I'm like, I make people leave, period. I find out, you know why I'm so depressed? Because I can't stop thinking about myself. Look, I know some people are clinical depressed. I am not. I can't stop thinking about myself and I get depressed. I know people have anxiety disorders. I get anxiety because I can't stop thinking about myself. I wonder how much freedom there would be if I stopped thinking about myself all day. Overwhelmed. Do this fifth step. I go back to the mission. Lay down on my bunk bed. Ask me some questions to do after I do this fifth step. One of them says carefully reading the first 5 proposals. We ask if we had omitted anything. And I omitted some stuff. And I'm sitting there looking at this and I'm like, I need to call him and tell him. And I did. Then I could answer all those questions. But more importantly, this was there's been 2 just most spectacular things that have ever happened in my sobriety. And doing that first this step is one of them. Because this is what I got. We are delighted. We can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. We feel we're on the broad highway walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. That. Especially the feeling that the drink problem had disappeared. But see, in the back of my mind, I always drink again. So I'm doing all this step work with a lot of skepticism, a lot of like, it's just a matter of time. Because I've never, ever not drank. But I'm laying there at the mission in this stuff. Nothing externally has changed. I'm still at the mission. I'm still eating soup 3 times a day. Nobody will talk to me in my family. And yet everything's different. And the film from my eyes was removed to where now I could see. Doesn't mean I could stop because that's what I wanted to do was stop. Well, now that I know, right? The self-knowledge. Well, now that I know, I'm sure I won't do it again. I always do it again. And then I did the 6 and 7 step by myself, like it says. And in the 6th step, it says, if we still cling to something, we will not let go. We ask God to help us be willing. That waiting part, that asking and waiting can sometimes feel torturous. And then I did that 7-step prayer. And then when I met back up with them, I had my inventory. And that's where we got my 8th step list from. There's some more people we had to add that I had no resentment or fear or relationship stuff with, but they needed to be on that list. He helped me the whole way. I couldn't do it alone. I was so afraid. This self-centered fear, driven. I couldn't face the world and look it in the eye. And here this guy was helping me. And I started making amends. Then we read the 10th step. Then we read the 11th step. What to do in the morning and the evening. We read the whole book up to page 164. A Vision for You. We read about family afterwards, 2 wives, 2 employers. These spiritual principles repeated over and over again in different ways. The big book isn't 1,000 different things. It's 12 things repeated 1,000 different ways. But the same thing, service and self-sacrifice, and this destruction of self-centeredness at home, at the workplace. And it doesn't come to me naturally. It's not my default position to be helpful. It's literally, my default position is literally the opposite. And the one thing it says it's easy to do in the book, it's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action. Man. In Dr. Bob's story, it's actually not in his story, but in Vision for You, when they talk about Dr. Bob for a little bit, it says his 30 years of hard drinking were repaired in 4. That's Dr. Bob who talks about permanent sobriety, being done for good and for all. All that mess, that unforgivable stuff I had done, just the list went on and on. It was repaired in 18 months. Miracle doesn't even seem strong enough for that for me. And yet 18 months later, see, because when I made amends to my mom, because I'd ask her, I'm like, look, there was a lot of stuff that I didn't remember. She told me. But then when I said, how can I make some things right with you and Dad and my brother and sister, she goes, you come back here and live. You come back to South Florida. And you live here. And you be the son you weren't and the brother you weren't. See, now they're now I got it because in the 9th step it says they're more interested in my behaviors than my talk of spiritual discoveries. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, I got to do this. Our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depends on our constant thought of others. Man, that's a tall order for a selfish, self-centered person like me. To be a good Samaritan all the time. See, I'm really good at some of the time. Books ask me to do it all the time. So I've moved back there. And when I left CNN, Ted Turner owned it back then. But when I made amends with him, he was like, Stan, don't ever try to get a job in broadcasting again. Because I had screwed them over so bad. And like I said, 18 months later, I'm working for NBC down in South Florida. I was a cameraman. Got my driver's license back. And I'm going through the steps each year. All right, sounds good. Going through the steps at meetings, I'm talking whatever step I'm doing, whatever's going on. Taking a meeting out to the prison every Friday night. On the way there, my buddy, I'm bitching to him that we got to drive out. It's Friday night, man. And we're driving out to this prison to do this meeting. This sucks. I can't believe this. And then, of course, on the way home, oh man, can't wait to go next week. Those guys love us. But I'm not doing 10 and 11 and 12 the way it says in the book. But I don't know I'm not doing 10, 11, and 12 that like it says in the book. I think I am. And I will tell you, undertreated alcoholism sucks. Untreated, I'll either drink, take my life, or go permanently insane. But undertreated, it's torturous. And especially because I didn't even know it. And around that 9, 10 year mark, my dad died of lymphoma. I had a 9, 10 year run with him, which was great. Going to lots of meetings. I'm going to meetings where they're talking about if you haven't taken a drink today, you're a rip-roaring success. But I also found myself sitting in a jail cell for the second time in this 10 year period down in Palm Beach County. They call it Gun Club. If you ever fly into Palm Beach International Airport, it's the tallest building you can see. And I'm sitting in there and I'm wrapped up in a blanket and I hadn't drank, but I can tell you I did not feel like a rip-roaring success. There was a second charge for assault and battery because in my mind, I'm driving this big old NBC van. It's got a huge peacock on it. How could this guy cut me off? Could he not see me? There's a satellite dish the size of a small building. How did you not see me? And so I follow him into a gas station like I usually do. And I beat the shit out of him, and that puts me in jail again. And being this my second charge, second time, NBC fires me. I come walking out of jail. I'm like, you know what? I've had a good run. The ideas or thoughts of taking my life are now becoming, I'm going to make a plan. This is, and again, the delusion. I think I've had a good look. I'm going to die sober. This is a good run. I've coming up on 10 years. This is fine. And the next thought crossed my mind, like, well, maybe I need medication. Maybe I'm one of those that's chemically imbalanced, and let me go see my doctor. She's in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I go see her. She asked me what's going on. And I can't hold a relationship together either. Let's not get, I'm falling in with that crowd that's talking about relationships are just hard. Right? Just relationships are hard, period. So I'm going from relationship to relationship. I've lost my job. I'm now thinking it's the conditions on the outside. Falling back into that. If you wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't need to do this. Talking to her in her office. Then she goes, Stan, are you working with anybody? I said, no. Then she spun her little stool around, and I thought she was getting a prescription pad. And she spun back around with the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then she said, Stan, are you doing the 10th step? I said, oh, yeah, I'm doing the 10th step. She goes, you are? And I said, yeah. And she said, you're doing this. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Love and tolerance of others is our code. She goes, you're doing that every day, Stan? Because that's live. 10 step in this book talks about live. This is what we're doing. I said, yeah, that's not the 10 step I'm doing. I'm doing the one they're talking about in the 12 and 12. I'm doing spot check inventory. So that's about once a month. Going through the book again because it says that sometime. I'm doing that. She goes, that's great, Stan, but those are essays. This is the treatment for your alcoholism. Then she said, are you doing the 11th step? I said, yeah. And she said, so every morning you start with, on awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. I was like, every morning? She's like, every morning. Yeah, it's not the 11th step I'm doing. Then she said, at nighttime, Stan, it says when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. And she literally said, are you doing a written inventory every night? I'm like, written inventory every night? No, I won't be able to sleep if I write all that stuff down. Then she said, are you working with others? And I go into the about taking the meetings and going to meetings. She said, that's not what I asked you. See, because when that guy took me through the steps the first time, at the end of that, I looked at him and I said, you saved my life. There's no way I could repay you. And he said, yeah, you can. And you will. He said, you're going to take other guys through the book like I've taken you. And I remember thinking, that's the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. That I don't want to do that. And now here I am sitting. And she reads, from working with others, you can help when no one else can. She knew my story. She goes, you promised that guy you were going to take other people to the book. You can secure their confidence when others fail. You can be uniquely useful to other alcoholics. That's what she's reading me. And then she closed it and she said, you don't need medication. You don't need to take your life. You need to do 10, 11, and 12 like we just read right here. And I did. I went back to the book. And from then on, I've been doing 10, 11, and 12 the way it says. And that's the second most spectacular thing that's ever happened to me in my life. No words can describe what happened and has been happening. I've been accountable to these guys the last 21 years. We do an email every Sunday about these disciplines, about doing the 10th step, the 11th step, and the 12th step. And again, miraculous doesn't even seem like it's strong enough. Because see, I'm a loser with a 31-year winning streak. I will still resort back to harming others if I don't treat my alcoholism on a daily basis. That daily reprieve I get, that stay of execution I get by doing this work. And it still goes back to the same admission price, destruction of self-centeredness. When I get afraid today, it's because of self-centeredness. I want to blame it on outside stuff, but it's internal. I love the part in the vision for you. Great events will come to pass. That's just a fact for us. My great events are different than your great events, but if you do this work, your great events will come to pass. Period. See, it's no longer what Dr. Young told Roland Hazard. Here and there, once in a while, there's these phenomena that happen. Now it's every time someone goes through the 12 steps, period. Every time. It's not a phenomenon anymore. Period. It's kind of like what Dr. Silkworth and Bill's story about spiritual experience. I know they are real. That's what the doctor said. Oh, I know they're real. Now I know they're real. We have 100% treatable illness, and majority of the folks will die of this thing. Of course, there were three absolutes I told myself when I got sober. One, I would never leave Florida. I would never go back to school. And God forbid I would never work with alcoholics because we're the worst. I moved to Park City, Utah. I went back to school. I work at the University of Utah. I work in detox. Because way on early in the book, it said we let him demonstrate to us what he can do. When the rubber meets the road. See, I'd rather talk about stuff than actually do it. I've never manifested anything. The only thing I manifested is a bunch of crap. Harmful, harmful, harmful. And when I do this, these clear-cut directions, like it tells me, we'll show you precisely how we have recovered. I'm a recovered member of Alcoholics Anonymous, period. And like my friend Ann says, everything I have should have a stamp that says property of Alcoholics Anonymous, because that is the only reason I have it. I didn't earn it. I am astounded at God's goodness through the power of Alcoholics Anonymous. There was no way I was going to get to God without Alcoholics Anonymous, and there was no way I was going to get to Alcoholics Anonymous without God. My finite mind cannot describe this infinite power. It was my sponsors, it was Mark Houston that I heard it talked about. I'm really not interested in the definition of God. I'm interested in the power behind the name. Do you want to tap into that? This power that's been saving lives since 1935. Do I want to do that? And yeah, life's still hard. I have to feel the uncomfortability of the feelings. I hate, y'all, I hate rhymes in AA. But my buddy, he's always like, Stan, the healing's in the feeling. And I'm like, if you say that one more time, to sit with it, to pray and wait. My sponsor's big on saying, Stan, just let God untangle it. Keep your hands out. Abandon yourself to God means abandon yourself to God. And I'd be like, I know, but my insides, I feel like we're ripping my insides from the inside out. Man, thank God for Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank God they wrote it down. Man, I can never repay Alcoholics Anonymous for what it's done for me. I'm indebted. So indebted to Alcoholics Anonymous and the men that came before me and the ones that are still in my life now. And yeah, I have lifelong friends in Alcoholics Anonymous. Jeez. And I have a wife that we've been married 19 years, and she's a little big book thumper. Man, that girl. Yeah, she's one of those ones, walked into an AA meeting at 20 years old, got a sponsor, did the work, been doing the work ever since. You know, we talk Alcoholics Anonymous in this house. There's a big book in every room. Damn. And I almost missed out. I almost missed out because I didn't want to believe the folks that had gone before me. Thanks for letting me share.